Hi, what's up, guys? Mikey B here with Mark Johnson, and we're going to try something new for you guys. So, Mark, why don't you let them know what's going on?
And many of you know me as Mark Johnson, Marky J, and others as Judge Johnson. I'd like to say that court is now in session thanks to Mikey B. Uh, Obviously, many of you have already found me over at fantasyfirmblog.wordpress.com. You can also check me out on Twitter at MJFantasySports. And we're going to talk to you a little bit about what we've got in store in the fantasy season here in 2017. Now that 4 weeks are in the books, I often say that that's when we can actually begin to get a clear picture as to what we can expect over the next 3 quarters of the fantasy season. As Mikey B and I were chatting about before before coming on, I often relate fantasy football to playing the stock market. And to wisely invest money in the stock market, you need to be able to observe trends. And while you may understand players just as you may understand companies, until you have a bit of time time to evaluate these players, it's difficult to pick up on trends. And so now that 4 weeks are in the books, this is to me probably the most pivotal point of the fantasy season. You've got teams that are you're 2-2, you're 1-3, you're 3-1. The records right now, this is a real big turning point, and because now is the time that you can really evaluate that talent and what to expect moving forward, this to me is kind of the crux of either your push for the playoffs or what may end up with you being in the cellar for the rest of the year.
Good point. And also, it's without the hurricane stuff going on, this is the first bye week, so it's just an important week, I think, in general. Speaking of week 4, we want to try and a little bit of a recap. So, Mark, do you have any big surprises that stick out to you as far as last week?
Yeah, I mean, week 4 was really full of them for me. First and foremost, I just thought I'd say that Deshaun Watson is clearly not a fluke, and it's been quite a while now where you've got these quarterbacks who score you points with their legs are kind of an increased value. I mean, just look at Tim Tebow in, 2011, 2012. The guy couldn't pass, better than me, but running, he's using his legs, he's scoring you points, and it gives you a higher floor. And Deshaun Watson is just the next player like that, except there's something extra there about him. He's a winner, and you saw that at Clemson. He comes in, I have no idea what Bill O'Brien was thinking starting Tom Savage, especially now with what we're seeing. But last week, Watson, week 3, almost beats the Patriots in Foxborough. Now, we know the Patriots' defense. We'll get to that. But he almost knocks off the defending champs in Foxborough, enters week 4, puts up 5 touchdowns, 4 passing, 1 rushing, and absolutely obliterates the Tennessee Titans. To me, Deshaun Watson, number 1 surprise of week 4. Same line of thinking here. Another quarterback who uses their legs to score points, or did, then didn't, and now does again, and that's Cam Newton. New England Patriots are just, they seem to be the team that gets these players on course. And Cam Newton was on my list of players to possibly sit this week, even though he was going up against the team that was giving up the most points to opposing quarterbacks. Cam Newton, for me, was just not showing you anything. And here he comes, plays the New England Patriots, passes for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and rushes for another one and 44 yards. To me, it seems like he's found his groove. Kelvin Benjamin ended up playing. I thought Christian McCaffrey would do more, didn't. Still like him. Devin Funchess seems to be absorbing some of those Greg Olsen targets. Cam Newton, that was a surprise. I did not see the Carolina Panthers winning that game, and to me that was number 2. Number 3, maybe the most surprising thing of week 4, and that's the Los Angeles Rams. They went into Arlington. They beat the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think anybody had that game picked that way. And if you did, hats off. Todd Gurley, are you kidding me? I know we're 4 weeks in. Some of you may disagree with my philosophies as far as the first 4 weeks of the NFL season go. But Kareem Hunt, he's been RB1, number 1 on the season so far. But I don't think that's likely to stay the same. I think that's likely to change. I think Todd Gurley is going to be the number 1 running back in 2017, and he's showing you why. He goes for over 200 yards from scrimmage. The dude's a machine right now. And so I think that the Los Angeles Rams going into Dallas, huge huge upset and huge surprise.
You know, let's look ahead to Week 5. Thursday is a big matchup, some big offenses. Let's talk about just some guys that you think, in general, have good matchups. They may be obvious, maybe they're not.
Let's start with the more obvious. There's one matchup, and we talked a little bit about this before the show, Mikey B, but that's the Tampa Bay New England game. I think this thing's going to be an absolute shootout. So for me, New England, I've just mentioned them already. Their defense is porous. I've mentioned them a couple of times already. I think that this is a game where, Tampa Bay comes out hot in their first game. They kind of fall flat in their second game. Week 4, they're back. I think they keep it rolling here. I think against the Patriots, they definitely put up some points. So Mike Evans, he's a definite must-start wide receiver 1, elite wide receiver 1. The New England Patriots give up the 4th most points to opposing wide receivers. Mike Evans is in my top 3 this week at the wide receiver position. You're starting Jameis Winston. New England gives up the most points to opposing quarterbacks. And with that, this, to me, it's a little bit of a gut call, but I think Deshaun Jackson is going to have one of his boom weeks. I know he's boom or bust. I think this is one of his booms, given the matchup. On New England side of the ball, Tampa Bay gives up the 3rd most points to opposing quarterbacks. So you're a Tom Brady owner. You're salivating. It's not like you weren't starting him already, but I expect big numbers out of him. And they also they give up plenty of points to the wide receiver position as well. So I think this is the week that Brandon Cooks owners have been waiting for. They've had one good week with him already. They've been disappointed most other weeks. And so to me, this is going to be the Cooks week that you're really, really excited about. You're also starting Chris Hogan, probably starting Amendola as well. I could see this game easily with both teams over 30 points in this matchup. So to me, that's those are two teams to look for in starting lineups. Just to quickly run through some other names that I'm looking at for week 5. Devontae Parker, Tennessee gives up the 2nd most points to opposing wide receivers. He's built a lot of rapport with Cutler. I see him having a big week this week. Larry Fitzgerald, Philadelphia has a good defense, but surprisingly, they gave up the 3rd most points to opposing wide receivers. Their secondary is a little lacking. And Fitzgerald showed you he's the ageless wonder. He can still put up plenty of numbers, especially in PPR. He's a name on my radar. And then Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell is going to go absolutely off book it. He just had a huge game. He's playing the Jags. The Jags have one of the best secondaries in the NFL, but they're not a great team. They're not a great defense. Where can you hurt them? You can hurt them on the first level and getting through to the second level with the rushing attack. I know what you're thinking. Oh, Miles Jack, he's a big pickup in IDP this week. That's great. That's well and good, but Le'Veon Bell is going to put up points. He, for me, is the number 1 running back in Week 5.
Is there anyone that you think, just that comes to your mind as far as, like, guys that you should drop in order to kind of fill out a roster? Is there kind of that fringe guy that people may be holding on to that they shouldn't?
First name that comes to mind for me is Trevor Siemian. I know that's a weird name. Many of you are thinking, this guy was on my waiver wire 2 weeks ago. Why would I be thinking about holding on to him? I'm just tossing him out as the QB that comes to mind most quickly, as a guy that you can just dump. He's had 2 bad weeks in a row. He couldn't do anything against Oakland, which I believe has a pretty lackluster pass defense. So Siemian can go. Names that you might, people might have a tendency to want to hold on, especially running backs. I feel like this is the time of year that people get just desperate for running backs. And you may have seen this too, Mikey B, in your leagues, but people place a higher value on running backs and sort of the, I'll call them like the fringe talent running backs, the players that are, maybe of value later in the year if injuries happen. Like Terrence West for me is a guy that I'm comfortable cutting. If I get him back again after the buys are over, fine. If not, no big deal. Adrian Peterson, I hate to say this because I think the player still has a lot to give, but not in that offense. I think that he needs a new agent. I will say this. I don't think that this will happen. But if I were his agent, I'd be calling the Minnesota Vikings, and I might even be calling the Green Bay Packers. There are teams out there now that might need some running back help, and Adrian Peterson is in the wrong spot. So anyway, I don't see any of that happening, and I don't see anything changing in New Orleans. So he's a name that can go. Paul Perkins, Wayne Gallman looks to be taking over already. I mean, I think that's a little bit of a premature statement, but he can go. Matt Forte, not worth holding on to. Elijah McGuire, interesting name we can touch on later. Jalen Richard, he doesn't get nearly enough work. We'll talk about Marshawn Lynch later, but he's not worth holding on to. And Jeremy Hill, he's been surpassed already in touches by Joe Mixon. Gio Bernard's the third down back there. Hill can go. Here are some names that you are not going to be comfortable about dropping. But if you have a stacked lineup and you don't need these guys, but you need someone somewhere else, it could be a defense. You might need a kicker. If you just need the room and no one else is worth cutting, or you have a bunch of talent elsewhere and one of these guys, feel free to let him go. J.J. Nelson seems like he's dealing with hamstring issues. Jerron Brown is sort of starting to pass him by. Ted Ginn is just not getting we thought that Ted Ginn would take the top off of defenses and kind of be Drew Brees' new favorite deep threat pet. Not happening. Kenny Golladay, I mentioned him earlier. He's a sleeper. He's a better dynasty name than anything else. He's never going to give you consistent points this year. I just don't see it. I see Marvin Jones filling the same role that he does. And so I think Golladay is a better 2 years from now name, that a dynasty stash than anything else. And one guy I hate to say this about because I own shares is Jordan Matthews, but he's out for a month and he hasn't really done much to begin with. So for me, Jordan Matthews is a guy you can cut ties with, and those are the names for me. Where if you've got those players and you need space, make space.
Makes sense. All right, let's take a couple questions, or at least one question from our buddy Garrison. This guy likes to write in every week. And this is the first week, so I guess every week. He's asking. You
gotta start somewhere,
right? Dalvin Cook is his RB1. Obviously, Dalvin goes down. He's wondering if he should trade his wide receiver 1 to fill the void, or just try and find someone on waivers and keep his wide receiver 1. He didn't say who that receiver was, but let's just assume it's someone like Mike Evans or.
Okay. Garrison always is blowing me up with questions on fantasy football. I know he does the same with you. I think that this is a good question. As far as the questions that he usually poses go, I think this is one of his better questions. Knee-jerk reaction, I wanted to say look for someone on waivers, because you've obviously got Latavius Murray. You've got sleeper names still kind of rolling around on the waiver out there, like Elijah McGuire, Alex Collins. I mean, these are deep, deep names, but there are players out there. The more I thought about it, though, I thought to myself, this is really roster construction dependent. If he's stacked at wide receiver, then obviously it puts him in a situation where he can afford to give up some wide receiver talent and then maybe go out there and get a legitimate running back. As far as what I like to do, this is the time of the year. If you want to make a trade, you're in the sweet spot, because the later you get into the season, people are starting to give up on their seasons, or they're just completely dead set in that they know what they have and they're going to run with it. I think that it makes a lot of sense to try to – depth is not important weeks 14 through 16 more often than not. What's important is stud players at your positions that score you the most points. I was talking about this before the show, but I would rather have a Mike Evans than a Keenan Allen and a Joe Mixon, because I believe that Mike Evans' ceiling is going to exceed what those other two players give you, and it's not like you're not going to have a running back. You're going to have Mike Evans, and then maybe you're going to have a Gio Bernard, even a guy from the same team. I'd rather have that any day of the week.
All right, well, let's take a look at some guys that you like to, talk about as far as buying low, selling high. Just, people that maybe you should think to target or you should think to get rid of.
Well, I wrote about it last week, and I got a lot of angry text messages. I told people, hey, this is the time to buy Amari Cooper and Joe Mixon. And then a lot of people took that advice, and instead of just, what I meant it to be, to go out there and buy them, they inserted them into their lineups as if they were starting players. Amari Cooper was in the no-fly zone playing the Broncos. I think that now these two players are still buys for me. They're just buy even lowers. Amari Cooper has had a dreadful season, but you don't go from being a top first-round talent 2 years averaging 1,100 yards receiving to being a wide receiver 7. I get it. He's put on some muscle and some weight. I don't like that, but he's not David Boston, and I think that Amari Cooper bounces back in a big way. It's just a matter of time. So if you can get him for the price of a low-end wide receiver 3, my God, do it. That's 70 cents on the dollar. And Joe Mixon, I said this earlier, but he's passed Jeremy Hill in touches. He is the guy there. I think that he's had a slow, sluggish start, but he hasn't put the ball on the turf. He's getting the work. Matter of time. Tariq Cohen, think he's getting the touches. He had a down week. People might be thinking, because this happened to Chris Thompson this week too, these, I want to call them Darren Sproles type running backs, I could see Cohen owners thinking maybe that wasn't for real, but here we are. I got Mitchell Trubisky is about to take over the helm as a rookie quarterback for the Bears. He's going to be looking underneath to his dump off. I think Cohen's stock actually goes up, so he's a definite buy low. Jay Ajayi, he's a buy for me. The Dolphins are struggling, but I see him as somebody that can still contribute low-end RB1, high-end RB2 numbers the rest of the way. He was overrated to start the year. I think he's probably come now down so far that he's underrated, so you could buy him low. My sells, Sammy Watkins. I wrote about this last week. You and I talked about it on the beta episode, and Sammy Watkins has probably the most difficult schedule moving forward. He will remain the Rams wide receiver I rank the highest just because of his ceiling, but he's just as likely to give you one catch for 17 yards as he just did, as he's likely to give you, what he did the week before, 2 touchdowns and 90 yards. You don't want that at that position. For me at least, when I'm trying to get a wide receiver 3, I know I said stuff about Sean Jackson. I stay by that. I like more than Sammy Watkins. When you go look at their schedules, you'll understand why. And then the other sell, this pains me to say, I have this guy in a dynasty league, and I'm just not sure I'll be able to sell him myself. But Tyreek Hill, he is just impossible to predict. He gets the looks, and I like that, but I don't know. He doesn't fit into this Chiefs passing attack the way I thought he might. He had that one deep bomb week 1 against the Patriots, but now we've gotten to know who the Patriots are. So I'm not sure Tyreek Hill is a wide receiver 2. I think he's more of a wide receiver 3 most weeks, a low-end wide receiver 3 most weeks. And if you can sell him at a wide receiver 2 price, do it, because that's where you probably drafted him.
Great job. All right, so our last one. You just wanted to give us some interesting names to keep in mind. We both apologize. Obviously, we live lives, and so it's difficult to get this content to you in time for waivers. We trust that you're absorbing all this material and other material, and you know what to do when it comes to Tuesday night. So good luck to you as we're recording this. We're both preparing to put our waiver bids in, but I wrote about this a couple weeks ago. I think one of the most important strategies in fantasy football is just the early bird catches the worm. You're not going to always get who you want on the waiver wire, and whether you play in a league that uses FAAB, free agent auction money, or a rolling waiver system, the biggest neglect, I guess, or the greatest negligence that you can commit in fantasy football is not waking up first thing Wednesday morning, and I mean first thing Wednesday morning, to go see who's processed to who and who may not have had a bid placed on them. You're getting free picking of an ocean of free agents. I do it every morning. I wake up I won't even tell you what time, but I wake up right away. First thing I do is I hop on my leagues and I check to see who's there. These are names that I think may slip through the cracks this week, the players that you might want to add, and frankly, they may just still be there throughout the end of the week. You just don't know, but these are going to be your hit or miss names as far as whether they get through waivers. And the first one up for me is a name that absolutely nobody is talking about, but the Fifth Circuit is about to make a ruling in the Ezekiel Elliott case. He could be suspended immediately. 6 games.
everybody out there, whether it's a fantasy football expert or just a common casual fan, thinks Alfred Morris is the handcuff to Ezekiel Elliott. And I'm going to call it right now, he's not. The handcuff to Ezekiel Elliott has been inactive for the first 4 weeks of football, and that's Darren McFadden. The reason he's been inactive for the first 4 weeks of football is he plays the exact same role as Ezekiel Elliott. He doesn't play on special teams. He's a north-south runner who can make jump cut breaks. He's there to be a 3-down back, or at least the first 2 downs, but he is there to be a 3-down back, essentially doing what Ezekiel Elliott is doing. And why would they play him the first 4 weeks? They have Ezekiel Elliott. If they are expecting that Ezekiel Elliott is going to miss substantial time, why play a guy with an injury history? Doesn't make sense. So here's this guy that you can get for nothing, absolutely nothing. I think that if the suspension happens, Darren McFadden is going to be the guy who does what he did the last time he came in and played for the Cowboys. He's going to put up points. And so Darren McFadden is the first player I'll want to let you know about, because he's not on anyone's radar. So if he's on your radar, probably a step ahead if I've got this one right. Josh Doxson almost won the game last night, and so it's you hate to see that. It would have been a great moment for him as a sophomore. He missed a lot of time last year, but did you see him go up over 44 inches to high point that ball? That would have been one of the craziest game-winning catches you've probably seen on a Monday night. I don't know the last time I've seen a crazier catch to finish a game on a Monday night. He is dealing with some type of injury concern. Health is always the red flag with him, but when healthy, he's going to be that guy that Cousins can look to and trust over the top. Terrell Pryor is not really getting it done. He's a name to look at. Elijah McGuire, I mentioned him earlier. I'm going to gloss quickly over him. He's probably gone by the time you guys are watching this. But if he's out there, he's a 6th-round back out of Louisiana Lafayette. I loved what I saw out of him. He could be a guy in 12-team PPR leagues especially that is a name to know. Wayne Gallman, we talked about him briefly. He could be the running back, the next guy up in New York. Maybe they finally found their guy. Zay Jones, very quick. Jordan Matthews, about to miss a month. People were high on Zay Jones as a sleeper coming into the season. Now he's going to have every opportunity to be the Bills' #1 wide receiver. He's a guy I'm looking at. Austin Seferian-Jenkins, he's a bonehead. Not as much as Travis Kelce, but a bonehead. And for me, Seferian-Jenkins might just see a lot of opportunity in New York. I don't want to make this about the Jets. Juju Smith-Schuster, especially in Dynasty, but even in redraft leagues, he's surpassed Eli Rogers as the slot guy for the Steelers. There's definitely targets to be had in that offense, and he's making them count. So I like Schuster, and I think he could continue to take a step up. Amazing, he's only 20 years old. Alex Collins, big time. He was a big-time running back for Arkansas, and not the most athletic back, but he's doing a lot with few touches right now in Baltimore. He's another name to watch. Mitchell Trubisky, we talked about him. Chicago Bears, rookie quarterback. You don't love that offense, but he's going to be a starting quarterback, I think, in 2 QB leagues. He's going to be lower end. He's possibly a streaming option. I know that there are certain quarterbacks, when they're on bye, I was looking through the schedule, and Alex Smith was up against the Broncos that week. So you don't want that. Those types of weeks when you're looking for fillers and you see that the filler that you're looking at has a tough matchup, a guy like Trubisky is a guy you want to look to. Finally, one of his pass catchers, Kendall Wright. We talked about Cohen, the dump-off option, swing pass option, what have you, as a good guy for Trubisky, the rookie QB to look to. Well, he's also going to look inside. And if it's not going to go to Zach Miller, Kendall Wright might fill that void.
All right. Well, for Mikey B, Marky J, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Good luck.